I'm Harry Smith. Tonight, the two extremes of dangerous summer weather. 1.5 feet of rain in Texas, where floodwaters have turned deadly, and
this is a mandatory evacuation.
A wall of flames in California forced more than 1,000 people from their homes and have firefighters battling day and night. Time for Plan B? With more Republicans calling for an end to U.S. military efforts in Iraq, a new report says the U.S. has wasted billions trying to train Iraqi soldiers and police. Our kids and concussions, medical advice about when it's time to take your child off the field. And iPhone intrigue. We're trying it out to see if it lives up to the hype.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening. Katie is off. Tonight, we're seeing the worst of two brutal weather patterns. Dry, windy conditions in California, where a wildfire has been raging for 4 days now. More on that in a moment. But we begin in the Central Plains, where it's been one storm after another. Since yesterday, 14 inches of rain in Burnett, Texas, 19 inches in nearby Marble Falls. In Oklahoma City, it's now rained for 15 days straight, breaking a record that stood for 70 years. Flooding in the region is now blamed for at least 11 deaths. From Garland, Texas, here's Hari Srinivasan.
Heavy rains that have plagued parts of Texas since early spring are bringing more misery. Overnight, storms drenched already saturated areas, leaving houses underwater and people scrambling to higher ground.
It took probably about 20 minutes for it to hit our porch, and then from there, not much longer, it was halfway up our house.
Residents of Marble Falls outside of Austin woke up to this after a remarkable 19.5 inches of rain fell in 7 hours overnight.
We have multiple damaged roads and bridges within the city. We are asking everyone who possibly can to stay at home and stay off of the streets.
Helicopters worked through the night to rescue stranded people.
And next thing we knew, we looked behind us and the river had closed in.
Dallas has seen 3 times the usual amount of rainfall. Nearly 9 inches this month makes it one of the wettest Junes on record. Rising waters have already claimed the lives of at least 7 Texans in the past week. The most recent victim was a 13-year-old boy that rescuers tried to save from this suburban Dallas creek last night. William Griffin was swept away by swift waters after he slipped out of the rope rescuers had thrown to him. It seems like you almost got to him.
Yeah, and when you're out there and you throw it and you hope, he's going to get it and you can bring him in and it's going to be a happy ending for the family. Instead, his mother now grieves.
He was a kind, sweethearted little boy.
The rain that's brought so much misery is forecast through the weekend. Hari Srinivasan, CBS News, Garland, Texas.
Meanwhile, California could sure use some of that rain. For the last 4 days, firefighters have thrown everything they've got at a wildfire near Lake Tahoe. But just as they've begun to make progress, strong winds threaten to make things much worse. Bill Whitaker is in South Lake Tahoe.
Here at the northern edge of the fire zone, crews use an arsenal of tools hoping to starve the beast, knocking down trees, clearing out anything the fire could consume, and cooling down this area that erupted in flames late yesterday and still smolders. This is what has them so concerned. Little hot spots like this, when hit by a gust of wind, can flare up and ignite this forest all over again. That's why this area has officials especially nervous. How far away is the fire from this development?
The black line indicates fire line. That means this area is all burned in here. So the fire is directly on the edge of the community.
Which is exactly why some 800 firefighters are protecting homes up here. Winds are blowing to the north, away from the area already burned. Hundreds more firefighters are digging lines in the dirt by hand and bulldozer to break the advance of the flames. And they've corralled the fire on the east and west as well.
A nice, long, straight fire line is what best survives a wind episode. And so we're hoping to hold on to these flanks right here. It's very important.
The fact is, in the last 3 days, they've actually made a line around 80% of this fire. But they're not calling it containment yet, since afternoon winds can carry embers across any line they make. That's exactly what happened yesterday. Firefighters were burning out low brush ahead of the main fire, and the wind blew the embers across the fire line, starting a huge new blaze.
It went from a calm day to a day that felt like Armageddon.
Today, the governor showed up to survey the damage. Officials told him they hope the winds cooperate over the next few days. But as the incident commander warned, hope is not a plan. Phil Whitaker, CBS News, South Lake Tahoe, California.
Now to Washington and the battle over the Iraq War. Republican Senators Richard Lugar and George Voinovich have reignited the debate over when President Bush should start bringing U.S. troops home. And today, Congress took another step to pressure the White House to change its course. Here's the latest from our chief White House correspondent, Jim Axelrod.
With debate intensifying in Washington about when to bring home the troops in Iraq, the Baker-Hamilton Commission that called for all U.S. troops to be out by next spring may go back to work.
We gave the president an opportunity a few months ago for a bipartisan solution to Iraq. He chose not to follow that immediately. I think the realities on the ground have made our proposals more attractive.
The House has passed a bill providing $1 million to reconstitute Baker-Hamilton. Co-chair Lee Hamilton says while conditions in Iraq have changed since their initial report last fall, their main point has not. The security of Baghdad's neighborhoods shouldn't be the top priority for U.S. forces. Training Iraqi troops should be.
That's the only way you really get out of there, is to make it the primary mission of U.S. forces.
But a congressional investigation concludes that after spending $19 billion on exactly that, the Iraqi security forces are not yet ready to assume responsibility for the nation's security. Investigators charge that the Department of Defense cannot report how many of the 346,500 Iraqi military and police personnel are operational today. If the White House was hoping for a helping hand from influential Republican Senator John Warner today, they didn't get it.
As you know, I came back my last trip in the fall of '06 and said it was drifting sideways. And regrettably, I don't think there's been much measurable improvement.
At this point, a majority of Republican senators still back the president. But one GOP senator tells CBS News it's a very real possibility that more Republicans may join Lugar and Voinovich soon. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, the White House.
Meanwhile, the Senate Judiciary Committee issued subpoenas today to the White House and to the Vice President's office, demanding information about domestic spying. Chairman Patrick Leahy said the administration has been evading the panel's investigation. The secret program, launched in 2001, allows the government to eavesdrop on phone calls to and from the U.S. without a warrant. Turning overseas now, the changing of the guard today in Great Britain. Tony Blair stepped down after 10 years as Prime Minister. He'll now become an international envoy to the Middle East. His successor promises a new government with new priorities. Elizabeth Palmer reports from London.
These were Tony Blair's last few minutes as Britain's Prime Minister.
And that is the end.
Never before has anyone received an ovation in Parliament. Blair then drove to Buckingham Palace to see the Queen. Rare pictures show one of their many meetings over the past decade. Today, he came to resign. While over at number 10 Downing Street, the movers were packing up the Blairs and making way for Gordon Brown, Britain's new Prime Minister.
And now let the work of change begin.
Brown has been running Britain's booming economy for the past decade as Tony Blair's most senior cabinet minister. They started out as friends, but over the years, the two men have become bitter rivals, competing for power. Now, at last, Blair, the charismatic master of spin, has given way to Brown, the sober technocrat.
He does not have a very light touch. He's a Scot, and that spells dour, very serious, very determined, very dogged, very careful with the money.
On foreign policy, Gordon Brown doesn't have a lot of experience, but he does know that most British voters want their troops out of Iraq, and that they have never trusted the close relationship Tony Blair has with President Bush.
Blair has been the unquestioning ally. He's been the unquestioning accomplice in foreign policy maneuvers, and that's not going to be the same.
Gordon Brown is a great fan of the U.S. He vacations on Cape Cod. Even so, it seems a safe bet that Britain's relationship with America will cool, at least until there's a new president in the White House. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, London.
In other news, first it was pet food, then toothpaste, juice, and toys. They're all on the list of imports from China banned by the U.S. in recent months. Today, the Chinese government cracked down on its food industry. Barry Peterson has that story.
An increasingly aggressive Chinese government, increasingly desperate to protect the reputation of its exports, said today it shut down almost 200 food processing factories. Factories using ingredients such as formaldehyde, illegal dyes, and industrial wax to make candy, crackers, pickles, and seafood products. It's unclear if any of these products were destined for export. Today's action comes on the heels of a massive recall of 1.5 million Thomas the Tank Engine toys because they were covered with lead-based paint and made in southern China, where our CBS News crew tried getting into the factory. We were told no, and that's no surprise. In some parts of China, rich factory owners can often keep even official prying eyes out, often by buying them off. So call this a warning message about such corruption. The former head of the Drug Safety Agency took bribes to approve bad medicine that killed 6. His sentence? Execution. And to avoid more problems from a country that grows half the world's vegetables, there is a new 5-year plan, increasing inspection of exports, creating a faster recall system for bad products, and blacklisting companies caught violating the new rules. China, says one leading expert, badly needs to keep reforming. The new regulations are better than nothing, says agriculture professor Hu Shaosong, but it will take years to make improvements. Foods like garlic are an example of China's export success, and today's crackdown is a way of safeguarding hard-won market share in America. China exported 1 million pounds of garlic to the U.S. in 2000. Now it's more than 100 times that, giving China 73% of the U.S. garlic market. That's what China's leaders are protecting. So when it comes to growing, processing, or exporting products, today's action is clear. Shape up or end up shut down. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Tokyo.
And there's more CBS News ahead. Next, important news for parents. A bump on the head can be more serious than you think. When to take your child off the field and straight to the doctor. It can be nerve-wracking for a parent watching a child compete on the playing field, especially when you consider this. Each year, 300,000 American children suffer concussions while playing a sport. So here's the question. When should you tell your child to shake it off, and when should you see a doctor? Here's Sandra Hughes.
Zachary Lysted's baseball coach has nothing but praise for this gifted athlete, and not just because his coach is also his dad.
He excelled in baseball and especially in football.
After a hard hit to the head in a middle school football game last fall, Zach came off the field, but the 13-year-old linebacker went back in during the second half. Then he collapsed.
I was laying on top of my child, begging God to keep him alive.
Now Dad is still coaching.
Turn to the right. All right, turn to the left. Good job.
Zachary, I need you to bend your legs. He can't walk, can't even swallow. His mom quit her job as a dental assistant near Seattle to take care of him. Zach's parents say he never should have been allowed back into the game after the first serious hit on the head.
Oh, man.
A lawyer for the Tahoma School District says Zach showed no signs of a concussion before resuming play.
Matt Colby crashed into the receiver.
17-year-old Matthew Colby had not fully recovered from a concussion when he played football the following week. A fatal mistake for the Costa Mesa teenager. He walked off the field and collapsed.
I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, Matthew, keep your eyes open. And pretty soon he couldn't.
The lesson for young athletes, parents, and coaches: you don't need to be knocked unconscious for a head injury to be serious. Any of these symptoms, Headaches, dizziness, blurred vision, memory loss, inability to concentrate require a trip to the doctor before getting back in the game. Many schools now require athletes to take a preseason test for comparison if they sustain a head injury later.
The benefit of it is tremendous.
Zach's parents believe his injury could have been prevented and will be overcome.
With his warrior attitude, he'll be all right. He'll get through all this.
Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Today, a 23-year-old Florida pilot claimed the title of youngest ever to fly around the world solo. Barrington Irving landed his single-engine plane near Miami, where he first took off 3 months ago. Irving covered more than 27,000 miles in a donated plane with more than 20 stops around the world. He called it a mission to inspire other inner-city kids and minorities. Next, pregnancy and depression. Drugs and pregnancy can be a dangerous combination, but there's some good news tonight for expectant mothers who suffer from depression. Michelle Miller has the story.
Hello. When Diana Morales found out she was pregnant again, she was thrilled but anxious. On top of balancing marriage, career, and motherhood, she was battling clinical depression.
I knew that I wouldn't be well during my pregnancy if I didn't take my medication. If I'm not well, then I can't really be the best mom.
Morales was taking the antidepressant Lexapro, one of a class of drugs that includes Zoloft, Paxil, and Prozac. They're bestsellers, but their safety in pregnant women has been debated for fear they might cause birth defects. Today, 2 new studies in the New England Journal of Medicine say there is little reason to worry.
Our results show that there are no major risks associated with SSRI use in early pregnancy.
Researchers found that using antidepressants during pregnancy increased the risk of birth defects by less than 1%. According to the Centers for Disease Control, every pregnancy carries a 3% risk of birth defects. Dr. Rebecca Brightman recommends obstetricians and psychiatrists work together to treat their patients.
There really is a subset of women who clearly do need to be on medication. They're doing so well on medication. They shouldn't feel this overwhelming guilt that they're taking something.
Researchers caution that suddenly stopping the use of antidepressants could be more harmful than the drugs themselves. Women on antidepressants should consult their doctors immediately when they learn they're pregnant.
Can you get the back?
Diana Morales chose to stick with her medication, though she lowered her dosage, a decision she says was right for her and her family. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
Next, the hype has been unbelievable, the price formidable. We'll take Apple's new iPhone for a test spin when we come back. Well, in 2 days, the wait will be over. We're going to take a live shot now outside the Apple store on 5th Avenue. There's a handful of people already online to be among the first to own the much-hyped iPhone. Daniel Seberg has a sneak peek.
We think there are going to be several 100,000 people lined up Friday night and Saturday morning just to have the first one, just for that cool factor.
The trick is getting your hands on one. David Pogue did, and as he showed us, step 1 is using your digits to unlock the iPhone's much-hyped features, whether playing videos or even resizing photos.
You zoom in or zoom out by pinching or unpinching with your fingers. It's spectacular.
Well, at least it is the core design, from web surfing to a menu of your voicemails that look more like emails to Google Maps.
It's not true GPS, but it does show you each driving instruction.
To, oh yeah, the phone, which isn't exactly front and center.
You have to turn the thing on, then you hit the home button, then you hit the phone button, then you hit the address book, and then you tap the names.
And in case you hadn't noticed by now, there's no physical keypad. It's virtual.
And that means a learning curve, especially for those of us with fat thumbs or who have just gotten used to typing on one of these. For most, though, it's still a thumbs up.
And unless you're some, emotion-free Vulcan, this phone brings pleasure, and that should count.
Okay, hold the iPhone for a second. Why so much buzz about yet another personal device?
It's got everything you need, all wrapped up in one.
People are already waiting in line. Ultimately, the build-up is built on Apple's now iconic iPod, which debuted in 2001 and has since sold more than 100 million units. That's how many iPhones Apple may sell by 2010, according to analyst Richard Doherty.
We think 1 million phones will be flying out the door that first weekend, and perhaps a few more million during July.
But cash will also fly out of your wallet. $500 to $600 for the device itself, plus a 2-year contract with monthly fees ranging from $60 to $100 using exclusive carrier AT&T, not known for having the fastest data network.
Am I on the case or what?
By the way, save your iPennies. Some analysts believe the next generation of iPhone may be available within a year. Daniel Seberg, CBS News, New York.
That's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For Katie Couric, I'm Harry Smith. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again first thing tomorrow on The Early Show. Good night.